So, dear colleagues, good morning. Thank you for joining with so many people. Feline infectious peritonitis is without any doubt one of the most challenging veterinary dilemmas of our time. Before we start, we wanted to address the outbreak of avian influenza in cats in Poland was confirmed last week. We, alongside the Aquatic Party, closely monitor information from Poland regarding unusual deaths in domestic cats in multiple households throughout the country. A report from the Polish chief veterinary officer indicated that 29 samples were tested. Investigations are required to better understand this cluster of cases to assess links between suspected cases and possible routes of exposure. Yesterday, the National Veterinary Institute communicated on results of genome sequence analysis of the HPAI virus detected in 9 cats in 3 different cities. All analyzed viruses are very closely related to each other and indicated that the H5N1 avian influenza viruses from cats analyzed so far originate from a single unidentified source related to the H5N1 viruses circulated in wild birds in recent weeks in Poland. The detection of single-source HPAI H5N1 infections involving 9 cats situated in 3 separate and distant sites, all within a short time interval, remains intriguing. While the Polish veterinary services continue further sequencing and investigation in close collaboration with EU reference lab, EFSA and ECDC, they recommend in the meantime to keep cats indoors, prevent them to come in contact with wild birds, and respect general hygiene rules. FVE will continue to monitor these outbreaks and provide updated information when available. Thank you very much. We are all very concerned and will monitor the situation closely. But now, back to our topic, feline infectious peritonitis is caused by the mutation of the commonly seen feline coronavirus, and cats either succumb to the disease or had to be euthanized within a few days after the detection of it. Though promising research results provide hope since a decade, there is still no authorized veterinary medicine for the treatment or FIP nor vaccine. This poses a massive dilemma for veterinarians trying to fulfill their professional responsibility and owners alike in letting an animal suffer when there is an effective treatment available, but not a mystery ball. FVE has gathered data from several EU and non-EU countries on FIP treatment availability and used them together with FECAVA. Both organizations have proactively been advocating a joint letter to the heads of medicine agency for the release of a small quantity of the nucleoside analog Remdesivir, also known as Vaclery, authorized by EMA, European Medicine Agency, for the treatment of COVID-19 to veterinarians. Today, we are looking to an unprecedented dilemma, which seems to have many more characteristics, including legal constraints. The unauthorized and therefore illegal drug from the black market, GS 441524, or short GS, was shown to be remarkably safe and can be given orally in a treatment plan along with Remdesivir, though an injectable version is available too. It is also a nucleoside analog and a breakdown product of Remdesivir. In the UK, compounding is not limited to registered products with the market authorization. Hence, the UK manufacturer Bova compounds GS and makes it available legally in tablet form. However, its unavailability in other countries has led to a flourishing black market for the drug, raising concerns about the purity of the composition and safety of it. We will hear more from the owners' interest groups later in the panel discussion. I was personally forced to euthanize cats due to FIP, and I recall the pain of their caretakers. Having now the theoretical possibility to save these cats, but being unable to apply it, it is an immense burden for me and for every veterinarian. Therefore, additional actions are needed to control and treat FIP, given the extent of infection in certain areas, such as Cyprus, Today, more than it was the case 10 years ago, reconsideration and re-evaluation of treatment opinions is on top of everyone's agenda. This webinar aims to raise awareness, to hear about the latest research results and new opportunities to explore solutions for the legal constraints and to create a space for discussion with an open mind. Reason enough for FVE together with FECAVA to organize this webinar. Today we are bringing together experts on FIP. Let's learn from them and discuss with them. Wishing you a fruitful webinar. Thank you. Maybe Victor, you will give us some housekeeping considerations.
Yes, good morning as well from the FVE office. We're very pleased to have you here. Just a very short housekeeping remark. For any questions, please use the Q&A box. And that's all. And now we can turn to our first speaker.
Thank you, Victor. So, going back to the presentation, may I introduce you, Katrina Hoffman. Katrina Hoffman is a veterinarian who studied at Ludwig Maximilians University, Munich, where she also obtained a PhD and habilitated in 1995. Currently, she holds the position of clinical director of the Small Animal Medical Clinic at the University of Munich, is the chair of Small Animal Internal Medicines, and deputy director of the Center for Clinical Veterinary Medicine. Katrina, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for this nice introduction. And thank you very much for this wonderful opportunity to talk about my most favorite subject at the moment. This is something I really, really like to talk about because FIP has been my research interest since many, many years. And now the whole subject has become very exciting. And this is amazing. I would have never thought, never ever in my life, that one day we would really talk about treating FIP and curing FIP. Never ever I would have believed in that. I've done many treatment studies with very, very frustrating outcome, and all the cats died and nothing helped. And now we are it's so amazing what happened in the last 4 years. So what I would like to do is, as an introduction to the whole subject, I would like to take you with me on a journey about FIP treatment, what can be used. And I'm only talking about antiviral treatment, but something from the past, something from the present. What do we know? What has been published about FIP antiviral treatment? Now, so antiviral treatment, I would like to talk a little bit about the different compounds that have been used to treat FIP, really only antiviral compounds, and then to give you a very short outlook to lead over to the next speakers on where we are at the moment. FIP, you all know FIP, a terrible disease, a deadly disease. It develops when a harmless virus mutates within the body, and then the immune system of the cat it really makes the cat extremely sick. It's the most severe inflammation within the body that we can imagine. And then the cats usually die within a few days. So antiviral treatment, there have been a number of compounds that have been tried for FIP, or at least have been discussed as treatment for FIP. Let's start with, but you know, so far up to a few years from now, since now, FIP was really deadly, and we did 2 or 3 studies in which we treated cats after confirmed diagnosis in different treatment studies where we tried interferon and different things. And actually what we found is whatever we tried, the median survival time was 8 days. So really frustrating disease. Now, let's start with antivirals, and I start with a very old one. It's called Rippavirin. It's still on the market for humans, and this is a very broad spectrum antiviral drug, and this has been used many years ago, already 30 years ago, also tried for FIP. It works really nice in cell culture against coronaviruses. However, when Weiss and his co-workers tried to cure FIP, they found that the cats that were treated actually died earlier than the ones that only received placebo, because this drug has so many adverse effects. Cats develop hemolysis, bone marrow toxicity, so we just cannot use it in cats. So this was a very frustrating outcome for the first antiviral that has ever been tried. Now, Methaloxine is a new one, or not a new one. It has been used for prevention and treatment of malaria in humans since many years. And now we know it has also been used for SARS-CoV-2 infection. And so there are cell culture studies in which it was tried against feline coronavirus, and actually it works in cell culture. And there are also 2 studies on pharmacokinetics and adverse effects in cats, in healthy cats. And so cats tolerate it well, and you can use it in cats, and in cell culture, it's also effective against feline coronavirus. But so far, we do not know whether it's effective against FIP. So that might be something that we will talk about in the future. Very similar, Intraconazole. Intraconazole is an antifungal drug that we all know. It inhibits cholesterol synthesis and transport, and in cell culture, it inhibits coronavirus replication. And in cell culture, if we combine it with GS441524, then actually there is synergistic effects, and it enhances the antiviral effect of GS. However, that's only known so far, nothing in cats with FIP so far. Well, something maybe for the future. Now, the first compound that really made me, there was already, I mean, this was so amazing when this first paper came out from the group of Niels Peterson in Davis, California. This was about a proteinase inhibitor, and this proteinase inhibitor GC376 was proven. It's developed by Gilead Sciences in the United States, and it was shown to be very effective also in cell culture, have a low cytotoxicity. And then the group of Niels Peterson, they did an experimental study in cats with induced FIP. 4 cats were treated early, 4 cats were treated late, and actually 6 of the cats were actually in remission. Long time later, they were in remission. After 8 months, they were in remission. And this was already, oh my God, 5 years ago. I said, this is amazing. How can this happen? And then he added on a field study using this proteinase inhibitor. They treated 20 cats. In the beginning, for 2 weeks in the beginning, 19 cats were in remission, but then there was relapse in 13 out of the 19. So finally, at the time of publication, 6 cats were in remission, so 6 out of 20. Much better than everything we had before, but no, of course not that exciting anymore. However, cats were not treated for a long period of time. Interestingly, here you see what happened to the cats, and during treatment or after treatment, a lot of cats finally succumbed to FIP, so there was a relapse, and many of them actually developed neuro-FIP. And this is, it was discussed whether this compound, the proteinase inhibitor, would not reach a high enough concentration within the brain to be able to stop coronavirus replicating in the brain. So even so, 6 out of 20 was much more than 0 out of 20. So there was already hope on the horizon. And one thing that has been published recently is also very, very important to know. So in this study, the researchers, they wanted to know whether they can induce resistance to of coronavirus strains to GC376. And they cultured the coronavirus in cell culture and in presence of the compound. And what they found is they found strains, coronavirus strains, that were actually resistant to this proteinase inhibitor and to other proteinase inhibitors as well. And GC was not effective anymore against these resistant mutants. And this is a very important information for us. This means that cats can become, or the coronaviruses can become resistant to antiviral drugs. And so we really should be careful that we only give those compounds to cats that truly have FIP, and we should not use it broad against coronaviruses that are actually harmless. We should really keep that drug for FIP, these drugs for FIP. So I showed you this compound because it's very interesting or important to know that this compound will be on the market soon in the United States, because Gilead sold the patent to a veterinary company called Anivif, and they are developing this compound for treatment of FIP in the United States. So this might be something that will help us in the future to legally import a compound against FIP. And maybe if you give it for a longer period of time or higher concentration, then maybe the results are even better and more promising than what was done in that only one field study. Now, Remdesivir, we heard about Remdesivir. Remdesivir is a compound that we all know. It is used for treatment of COVID-19 patients. So Remdesivir is actually a prodrug, the prodrug of GS441524, meaning that it's, if you compare the structures of GS and Remdesivir, you see that there is a tail of Remdesivir, so of phosphoramidate product. So there is a phosphate group, and the reason why Gilead, who has the patent for both compounds, has done this is a little bit unclear. Because this compound has to be converted to GS, and GS is then converted into the triphosphate, and that's the active compound. So this has to be converted to GS within the liver, and probably, or it was thought that maybe with that tail, with the phosphoramidate tail, this compound would better penetrate into cells. However, as we know now, it's probably not the case, and it's probably not as effective as GS, at least in cats. So this Remdesivir, of course, we all know, is on the market and could potentially be used in cats. It's a broad spectrum virostatic agent. Originally, it was used against Ebola. It was developed by Gilead Sciences. It is marketed under the name Vaclery since 2020. And it has been used in some countries for cats, such as Australia and UK, because there the company of pharmacy Bova reformulated Remdesivir specifically for cats. So there are not many studies published so far, but there are some hospitals, some veterinary hospitals in Australia and many people in UK that are using Remdesivir. So if you look, for example, at a hospital homepage of the Walkerville Vet in Australia, they say that they successfully treated 30 cats with Remdesivir for 84 days, and that it was relatively well tolerated and only caused local irritation. There may be some development or exacerbation of pleural effusion within the first 48 hours and some nausea and lethargy after IV administration. So it has been used, it is used. There's the only thing that's really published is one case report from South Africa. A cat with effusion FIP diagnosis was confirmed by immunohistochemistry. This cat was treated first IV for the first 3 days and then later subcutaneously for 30 days. And after 1 week, the cat was really improved in clinical signs. After 80 days, the cat was in complete remission. And 6 months after the end of treatment, when this case report was published, the cat was unremarkable. So this is the only thing that has been really truly published. Now, can we use it? We can use it legally. We could use human drugs. We could use human drugs. We could use them as injection, IV, and subcutaneously. The big problem is that Remdesivir is relatively expensive, and the vials are not stable after they have been opened. They're only stable for 48 hours. So if we use vials, if you use the human compound and use the vials every second day, then it becomes really expensive for the cat owner. Okay, so finally, GS441524. Now, again, there was that first study in which they showed in vitro cell culture data, highly effective in cell culture against feline coronaviruses. Then first, they looked in cats with experimentally induced FIP. They used the GS for 2 weeks in 12 cats. And all cats were in remission 8 months after end of treatment. And there were minimal adverse effects, just a little bit local irritation. This was subcutaneous use. So that was very promising. Then Niels Peterson followed with another field study. He treated cats in the field with and without effusion. He excluded, or they excluded, cats with neurologic or ocular signs. They used, we know now, quite low dose of 2 mg/kg subcutaneously for 12 weeks. And finally, you see here, many of these cats became better. In total, 7 cats had a relapse and 19 cats were in remission, even a long time later. There were very, very few adverse effects. However, the cats were not really in a very controlled setting, so they were treated by several veterinarians, but this is very exciting news. Then the next study that came out was a study on 4 cats with neurologic signs and or ocular, or some of them in addition had ocular signs. 4 cats were treated, and 3 out of 4 cats were successfully treated. They were still alive 1 to 2 years, almost 2 years later after treatment start. Only 1 cat had to be euthanized, and the cats markedly improved. What else do we have? Now, what else we have is we do have online surveys, kind of retrospective description of cats that are treated. We all know that GS is available on the black market. There's many different compounds containing GS are available on the black market through China. Owners treat their cats, and this was the first online survey, including 393 participants, cat owners. They treated cat with suspected FIP with black market compounds, and at time of publication, 88% were still alive. Then one study from Japan, 2 people that described also cats that were treated with a compound called mutation, Xafcon, and they actually looked at prognostic parameter, and they found that bilirubin was a prognostic parameter when they compared cats that survived and cats that died. So bilirubin was in this study the most important prognostic parameter. Now, finally, to end up, I would like to show you some of our studies that we did. We started with a study in which we treated cats with an oral multi-component drug containing GS. So this was oral treatment. And this is a collaboration with many nice people. So we collaborate with the University of Zurich, doing all our viral analysis there. We also cooperate with pediatricians. So we have a group that's called Coronaviruses in Cats and Kids. A wonderful cooperation has developed thanks to coronavirus diseases and common interest. So the aim of our study was to see whether that compound Xafcon from the company Mutation is effective in cell culture treating cats with FIP, and we also wanted to analyze the active ingredient in Xafcon, which was unknown and indicated that it would not be GS 441524, and we wanted to know how much is in these tablets. Now, first to the analysis, we did complicated analyses with these compounds and found by mass spectrometry, mass spectrometry and nuclear magnetic resonance that actually it is indeed the active ingredient is GS 441521. However, we've also found that in the tablets there are different concentrations, and in most of the tablets there was actually more than the double concentration of what was indicated. So the concentration of the compound was higher in that tablet than was indicated on the package. So that's important information. Then we actually included 20 cats in this treatment study that we really looked at prospectively at fixed time points. We made, you know, a fixed analysis and different time points. So we included them prospectively. 2 had to be excluded in the beginning because they were in a very bad condition already when they came to our clinic. We treated the cats and all cats did fine within a very short period of time. And we really could show that all clinical parameter, all laboratory parameter, they improved that much dramatically. So the Kanofsky score, temperature, effusion, weight, everything. Also the laboratory parameters, hematocrit, bilirubin, lymphocytes, total protein, amazing. You always see the reference range. Within a very, very few days, everything normalized. This was really amazing. Also albumin to globulin ratio, globulins, serum amyloid A, everything normalized dramatically within a very, very few days. Interestingly, also the viral load, we were able to measure viral load in blood by many of these cats, and this normalized very quickly. Viral load in effusion disappeared, the virus disappeared from these cats, very amazing. We did not see many side effects. Some cats developed severe lymphocytosis in eosinophilia, which is not really an adverse effect. It's more probably a sign of healing. And some had mildly to moderately increased liver enzymes. Only 2 cats had a little bit more severe liver enzyme elevation that we treated with silymarin, and then everything was okay again. We also, in the next paper, looked at coronavirus shedding in these cats, and we could show that the shedding stopped. Some 61% of cats were shedding within the first 3 days when we included them, and there was a significant decrease in the frequency of cats shedding coronavirus. But there was also reshedding, some reshedding during treatment or after treatment, which means it's very important these cats can get reinfected from other cats. So we also were able to sequence these samples, and what we found is indeed in the feces of these cats we only found wild type virus, while in effusion or blood we found the mutated virus. Now, we followed these 18 cats up over a period of up to 1 year, and this paper has been accepted and is really ready to get printed. And we followed them up over a period, as I said, over 1 year, and we did a lot of investigations, viral parameters, serum biochemistry, hematology, and what we found is that actually 18 cats were doing really fine. Unfortunately, we lost 1 cat in a road traffic accident. The viral loads of all cats went to 0. There was no virus. There was no virus in blood, in effusion. In feces, some cats got reinfected from partner cats, and antibodies were still present in most of the cats. So cats appeared to be in complete remission. The only thing that we could still see were lymphadenoma of abdominal lymph nodes, and in 2 cats, a very short period of mild neurologic signs compatible with feline hyperesthesia syndrome. So 2 cats after the treatment had an interesting appearance of feline hyperesthesia syndrome. These 2 cats had been treated. You see the itching in the back. And this came and disappeared again. So this is the only thing that we found when we did the long-term follow-up. The 1 cat that died in a road accident was this little cat, the first cat that we included into our trial, a 6-month-old male-neutered cat. It had uveitis, and in its eye that was enucleated, we found coronavirus antigen. And this cat was treated, did wonderful, happy, healthy, and then after 1 year was hit by a car and died in a car accident. But the owner would bring us the cat, and so we were able to investigate these cats more in detail. You see here, fecal virus load, blood virus load, all went to 0 during treatment, and then Gusti died here 164 days after end of treatment. And what we did is with Gusti, we looked at all tissues by histology, by immunohistochemistry, and by PCR, and we would not find coronavirus anywhere in that body. So he was truly cured. He was truly cured from FIP. Now, where are we now? I told you a lot about what has been published. Unfortunately, GS, which is so potent, unfortunately, it is not available to us legally. There is no license for GS, and Gilead does not give away the license and is not planning to license the compound. And so that's why we know that many people try to get compounds from the black market through Facebook groups. There's one wonderful development, which was already mentioned in the beginning, and we will hear more about that. The pharmacy Bova compounds Remdesivir and compounds GS, and there is the possibility to legally use GS in Australia and UK. Unfortunately, everywhere in Europe, we cannot import that Bova compound because it's not a licensed compound. There's only one possibility to do that, and this is if you do studies. When you do studies, then you can, for a study purpose, you can get the Bova compound. And just to let you know, I know that also in the Netherlands a study is going on, and we actually at the moment just started a new study including 770 cats. Half of them are 400 in Munich, 370 in Zurich, and we want to treat a lot of cats legally with the Bova compound. And the aim is to evaluate prognostic parameters. This study has been approved. We have imported or are on the way of importing the compound. Zurich has just started, Munich just starts now. And so veterinarians can send cats to Munich or Zurich. The cats have to come for a few rechecks, but they get everything for reduced costs. And if you are interested in those studies, so please let us know. We are happy to include cats. And I want to thank you for your attention. I hope I was in time, and I want to thank my wonderful, amazing FIP coronavirus team. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Katrina, for that informative presentation. We will now move on to the next presentation that will give insight into strategies in the UK and welcome Emma Jones. Emma Jones made the decision to move into the industry in 2010 after working as a veterinary nurse for several years. She worked with small animals, livestock, and horses as well. In 2017, Emma started at Bova and is now the business manager for equine and companion animal business and runs the team of territory managers in the UK, as well as assisting in the export of bovine formulations all around the world. Emma, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Thierry. Can you see my slides okay?
It's perfect. Okay.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to come and speak to you today. I just wanted to basically give an update on everybody around Bova and how we manufacture, and a few interesting facts about where we've been exporting around the world, including some of the European Union countries. So I am the business manager for companion and equine, so we do numerous formulations. And I'll just run you through, we're just going to talk about Bova quickly, cascade legislation, countries that we're currently exporting to, what we need to be able to export to you legally from our end, and then a little bit of touching on the cost of medications as well. So just a bit of a background, Bova actually has been in the market in Australia for the last 15 years. So Nick Bova, he actually took ownership of his family pharmacy in Sydney. So both of his parents were pharmacists also, and they were getting lots of requests for veterinary products. And that is how Bova emerged into the market. Then they basically started to concentrate on, in Australia, we call it compounding. And actually in the UK, we don't call it compound, we call it specials. And I'll go on to that later. In 2017, that's when we came to the UK. So it's a different business, although called Bova. We do have to work differently. We have to run under the VMD legislation, which is a pretty tough standard to adhere to, but great for the vets because they get a quality product. And then we started in equine to start with, because it's a smaller market and they have far less things licensed for them. And then in 2018, we actually launched the small animal range. And 2021 is prudent to today, because that's when we came up with the novel, we were able to launch the novel FIP products. And that was based on, the work that we'd been done previously by Niels Peterson, and then we'd worked with the KOLs both in Australia and the UK, and then we came out with the formulation and then also the dose rates, because this has never been a disease that we've been able to treat before, so it was a kind of new stomping ground for everyone to kind of find their feet on that one. And then we're continuing to work at the moment on new novel formulations, so looking at new actives to potentially treat FIP and lots of other diseases as well. So we are a dedicated manufacturing site. So as I touched on before, we aren't actually a compounder in the UK. So I will have to correct a few people on that one. We are a specials manufacturer. They are different. And the reason they're different is because a specials manufacturer in the UK actually has to adhere to a lot stricter regulations. So compounders across the world, they get a bad rep, and understandably, there's a reason for that. They don't necessarily have to adhere to any kind of standard. There's no regulations in place, and they can basically make whatever you want. So as a specials manufacturer, we have to. So we have a MANSA authorization from the VMD, so the Veterinary Medicines Directorate in the UK. So that's our government that comes and issues us with our license to manufacture. And they will audit us. So we're the only specials manufacturer in the UK that has all the licenses. So we're able to do sterile for the injectables, ophthalmic preparations, also cytotoxics and many other forms, so such as your tablets. So for those products, what happens is, and the difference is, we're able to supply a certificate of analysis, we're able to provide potency, we can replicate processes, we adhere to GMP standards, and all of our APIs are from those sources as well, and we check those as well, and I'll talk about those in the next slide. But these are some of the formulations that we manufacture, and I'll go on to the next one. So our GMP and product development, so our quality assurance process is here. So I won't read all of it, but basically the requests come through. So the FIP products come through from different key opinion leaders on where there is a need in the market. So we can bring out novel products, which we've done with those, and make them commercially available from your perspective and having a safe source. But we service out of stocks as well. So that's not just what we do. So a few years ago, everybody ran out of isoflurane, which is a big problem in veterinary hospitals. So we were able to quickly turn that around. So we also try and fill the market in a useful perspective as well. All of our sourcing for raw materials, we have a dedicated team on procurement, and we will source our suppliers. They go through rigorous checks and they're all GMP compliant. They either come from a compliant source or FDA, depends on the country and the source of materials. We don't just take that for granted. We test the materials as well. We sample them to make sure that they are exactly what they're meant to be, and there isn't anything else in there that shouldn't be. And then we come up with a formulation development. So we use our stability studies in line with the IHCH guidelines, and that backs up our shelf life as well. So we can only put on the expiry dates that we've actually proven to be that process. And our manufacturing processes have been validated. So yes, our products aren't licensed, but we do manufacture to GMP level. And then those manufacturing processes are repeatable. And we have literature review, we have sterility and microbial testing from external labs, so we can provide all the certificates for those for every single batch that we have, like you would have with a licensed product. So production is what it is. So our operators are all highly trained in their particular field of operating. So there might be a tablet manufacturing, they could be sterile, they could be many different things. So we just make sure that there's consistency in those, and all the processes are validated, and all the equipment is regularly calibrated, and that is all repeatable. And we have all the paperwork to go along with that, and that is all checked during our audits with the VMD as well. We have a whole team of QC and QA, so that's looking at validating analytical methods, making sure that the testing and releasing is all GMP compliant. And the VMD actually has to approve the person responsible for releasing on our MANSA authorization. So there is only specific people that can release products in those particular batches. And we comply with all the satisfactory regulations. And then we go on to supply, so it doesn't just stop there, we need to get it to you. So that could be if it's a cold chain product such as Remdesivir that needs to be refrigerated, then we need to have a validated method to be able to ship that to you. And then we also do pharmacovigilance. So if there is an adverse event, which inevitably there will be with pharmaceutical products, then we have a chain where that is reportable back to us. So we always encourage anything like that, and we can report that back in. And all of our territory managers and everyone within our customer service team is trained within that. So here, hopefully there's a little video playing. So this is Betty actually having one of her flavored tablets. So the Licky Licks, which is pretty awesome stuff, a little bit applied to the top of the tablet, and then she's taking a beef flavored Bova tablet fairly willingly there. So cats are our greatest critics, so we strive to make sure that we can make a formulation that is going to be as friendly as possible to cats and as compliant as the owners can possibly be, because if a client can't give the medication, then we all know that it's not going to happen. So we try to make things like tablets and things in maybe a paste that might be more applicable, or possibly a transdermal. But again, going back to the manufacturing side, we won't just put a particular API in a transdermal just because you can. We have to have proof and resources, studies, literature that shows that there is bioavailability there as well. The small dosing helps with accurate dosing. Quad scoring, which the particular tablet is, that works with that too, so for accurate dosing. And we make salt forms so that they aren't going to be acidic and burning inappropriately. Getting on to the regulations. So this is the interesting part for everybody. So this is how we're exporting from the UK into the other EU countries. So this is the overarching new guidelines that all of the EU countries fall in. So the regulation 2019/6. And the particularly interesting part is Article 112, Section C, where it says, if there is no medicinal product as referred to in point A or point B, so this is where your licensed products are coming in, a veterinary medicinal product prepared extemporaneously in accordance with the terms of a veterinary prescription. So that is where Bova fits in. So all of the countries fall in line with this overarching medicinal product for the regulations. They just decide to also add in their additional sort of regulations as well. So the EU regulations do not require or specify any extra hurdles for importing, and this is not a requirement. So the local laws that each country has put in place is exactly that. That's an additional part that they've put in. So that's something that needs to be discussed, because some countries have and some countries haven't. So, but there's no reason and there's no need to put those in. The overarching regulations don't specify that. So countries that we're currently exporting to, so Sweden, we send a lot to, so that we send a lot on companion and equine. Netherlands, we have sent some equine formulations to. Czech Republic, we've been sending quite a lot of the FIP medications to. Norway, we actually sent some yesterday. Finland as well. Germany, we're working with Katrina and her team for her study. We've been supplying the formulations for the study. Ireland and Greece are currently in discussions, and Cyprus has just been approved. So there's a few other that are in discussions, but we are currently sending to some of those. Again, they fall in these guidelines. It's just how each country interprets those laws and adds in additional hurdles for people to be able to import. So that's something to really be discussed. We're also supporting Sam's study that's just come about, so I won't talk too much about that because that's Sam, but basically the locations of the multi-center study that we were shipping medications from the UK, Australia was servicing their clients, and then we sent to Sweden, Switzerland and Japan. And I'll let Sam talk about that one. Katrina has just talked about hers. So that's another study that we are supporting in Munich and Zurich, and currently 770 cats. And we do have the information if you either want to come back to me or Katrina to enroll those cats onto that study. And then just touching on black market pricing, it seems crazy that you have to compete with an illegal, unauthorized, non-regulated product, but it just seems what we have to do. And I've just done a little bit of sums. You'll see the green chart, median dose rate for 84 days. Here, I don't know if you can see my mouse, is £2,336. for a effusive case, and actually is 277% more expensive. Now, Mutant is one of the more expensive black market products. I've put up the top right. You've got Cure FIP as another one that I've managed to get the prices for. Some of them you have to go onto their Facebook pages to get the pricing. And some of them will be cheaper than the Bova formulations, but some of them are more expensive. So it's just showing you that actually you don't have any consistency in the drug, which we know, but actually they aren't always as expensive as you think they are. And obviously it would give the vets more control and the government more control if it was allowed into those countries. We also have a range of CPD to help vets be able to treat those cases. So you can log on to the Bova website, and these are my contact details if you wanted to get in touch and ask about export and import into the countries. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you, Emma. It looks a very tasty tablet.
Tuna.
We now endeavor to get a global perspective, and that courtesy of Sam Taylor. Sam Taylor, who graduated from the Royal Veterinary College in 2002. Sam is the International Society of Feline Medicine veterinary specialist lead and also the clinical board and residency lead for Linnaeus. She's an honorary lecturer in internal medicines at Surrey University Veterinary School and coordinates the ISFM international guidelines. Her recent interest in FIP, FIP led to her setting up the FIP advice email, which has answered 1,000 emails from vets around the world on the novel drugs. Sam, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll just share my screen. Right, I hope you can see that okay and hear me okay.
Perfect, perfect. Sam.
Lovely. Okay, so I'll give you a little bit of background to our experience in the UK and around the world a little more about these drugs, and hopefully give you lots of hope and positive messages about the how effective these drugs are. So just as was mentioned earlier, this is where we were. So this is a selection of cats with FIP. You can see of various forms, neurologic, effusive. Arthur here had pleural effusion. Molly had ocular FIP. So we've got a real selection here of different types of FIP. And as Katrina mentioned, you know, a few years ago, we would have euthanized all of these cats, and all of us have had our fair share of cats that we've sadly had to euthanize with FIP. So keep these cats in your mind, and I'll tell you about what happened to them. So some of this has been mentioned, but just to give you the UK perspective and some information from Australia is that in 2020, we started to have discussions with Gilead about supplying the UK with Vaclery, which is the Remdesivir product. And they actually did agree at that time to supply to UK vets, but as has been mentioned, it was extremely expensive. It was used in a couple of cats in the UK and it was effective, but it's a very acidic product and it was very painful on injection to the point that cats were requiring daily sedation to administer these drugs. So not ideal. But from here, I just want to point out the extremely hard work of both Bova and the Australian vets, and particularly Richard Malik and some of the first opinion vets in Australia who worked very hard in discussion with Bova to change this situation. So those developments and discussions led to the availability of a legal formulation of Remdesivir that we could trust, that was safe, also had a much longer expiry date, and we didn't have the issues as had been had with the Gilead product as far as only being used for 24 hours. And as has been discussed, this is obviously metabolized to GS in the cat. So this drug came legally available in Australia and then relatively about 6 months later in the UK. And what was absolutely fantastic, and I can't stress this enough, is the international collaboration. And I hope this absolutely continues, because without the generous sharing of information, particularly from the Australian vets, where they've treated many cats, we would not have learnt about dosage. So they actually have been responsible for saving many cats in the UK with what we learned from their experiences of using these drugs. And I really hope that collaboration continues around the world, because it's been a real exercise in people who are interested in cats and interested in feline medicine, openly and widely sharing their thoughts on these drugs. So as mentioned, we created an FIP advice email, and we did this to try and help people who were starting to use the novel drugs, to take some of this information that we'd learned from the Australians, and also so we ourselves could learn. And so it's a group of feline specialists in the UK whose names I'm sure you will recognise, researchers and very fine collaboration here with people such as Severin Tasker, Emmy Barker, Danielle Gilmore and Steph Sorrell. And we have learnt a lot, and we hope we have helped a lot. We've answered, as mentioned, over 1,000 emails, but from multiple countries. This is not just from the UK and Australia. We've been answering emails from far and wide and helping as much as we possibly can. And as I say, learning ourselves in the process. So what happened? What were the developments from having these drugs available? Well, the early experiences with Remdesivir, because Remdesivir was available before GS tablets, was very positive, and we saw some miraculous recoveries. And this is one of the first cats that you can see here. This cute little cat with FIP is one of the first cats that was treated with legal Remdesivir in Australia. And within a very short period of time, that cat, very sick, became this cat, very well, and that remains alive today, several years later. It did become clear from our experiences with Remdesivir that we really wanted an oral formulation, because there are issues with obviously injecting cats for 84 days with a product that is much less acidic than the Gilead product, but still has some associated discomfort. And so we're really pleased to be able to get the GS tablets as well. And as Katrina mentioned, it's an absolute dream come true for us as feline specialists. What we sort of evolved over time, that we were learning so much, and we wanted to share that learning. And so we started to think we should put some of this data together in a study. And one of our other aims of that was to try and help you guys listening who cannot get hold of these legal drugs, because we had some feedback that if we could show that these legal drugs were effective, and we could show some information about their adverse effects, etc., that it might facilitate export, well, rather import into some of those countries that were just crying out for these legal products. And so we paired up with the University of Sydney, the University of Surrey, ISFM, and many colleagues to have a look at their experiences. It's a very descriptive study. We don't claim to have compared dosages, for example. We just wanted to see how people were using these drugs and if they were working, basically. And we were so excited because we had so many people help us, so mainly from the UK and Australia, but we also had people, and this is all the legally sourced drugs from Bova, some from South Africa, and a couple from Japan. And we ended up with 307 cats in our study. So you can see some of the cats here, and I won't give you all of the information. We're hoping to be published at some point soon. We have mainly purebred cats, overrepresented males, and some of the most common breeds did reflect the popularity of some of these breeds. So British Shorthairs, Ragdolls and Maine Coons. But again, that does reflect the popularity, particularly in the UK. And about 10% of them had a sibling or housemate with suspected FOP, which was an interesting finding. And I won't take you and take over the presentation by telling you all of our results, but I just want to show you why we're so excited and happy, and we so hope that everyone can get hold of these medications, because our responses are around 85%. We do see cats that don't respond. The sooner they're presented and treated, the better, because if they get very sick, they have very severe neurosigns or become septic, for example, those patients we can't always save, but we can save the majority of them. We see relapse, but thankfully very infrequently, usually during or straight after the treatment protocol, with some late relapses that are quite interesting. But what you can see from these stats, and please remember not to compare Remdesivir to GS, because this data includes the very early use of Remdesivir, which is where we were using lower doses because we didn't know. And that's what we've learned over time. But even there, we can see a response rate of, up to 75%. And then as we've learned and started to use some higher doses and using even GS alone, you can see we have over 90% response and alive at the end of the treatment periods, which is just mind-blowing and fantastic. I think you'll agree. So from an international point of view, outside of the EU, we can get legal sources of GS and Remdesivir, obviously in Australia, UK, Switzerland, Japan, and I think Emma's had some success sending a little to Singapore, South Africa, and there are ongoing efforts elsewhere, including the US and Canada, and I had lots of discussions at ISFM with our Canadian colleagues on how we can manage to help them. And as has been mentioned, some other countries can use human Remdesivir. And at ISFM, we're very keen to help people and the FIP advice group. So we'll continue to try and help, as hopefully we will start to see a worldwide availability of safe drugs of known content. And here's a cat that was one of the Australian patients that was treated quite early, standing with all of the Remdesivir vials that was used to treat him. So a big ask to inject for that long, but before we had the oral medication, that's what was done. And you can see he's telling you it was very, very effective. So I finished my story just showing you where we are now. These cats that would have been euthanized are now very happy cats. So Hudson was the first cat that I treated with the legal drugs. He had an effusive FIP. He's alive and well 2 years later. Arthur was very, very sick, and you can see now he's looking extremely well, showing off where his hair has grown back in a dark colour, where he had his effusion drained. And a few more cats for you here with different forms of FIP. So Fibonacci had neuro FIP, Molly had ocular FIP, Leo here had what we tend to call dry FIP, so a non-effusive FIP. And Batten was an 8 kilo Maine Coon who had abdominal FIP. And all of them, I can tell you, continue to be alive and well. Thank you very much to all of the authors and the people that we collaborated with. And I can't stress enough how this was a collaborative work and how I think this is an example of people who love cats and cat vets all working together around the world for one purpose, and that was to cure FIP. Thank you very much.
Thank you for this insight, Sam. Thank you to all speakers for your input. After all the valuable information that was presented, we will move on to a panel discussion to continue the dialogue on FIP treatment. But maybe give the opportunity to Dimitris Epaminondas from Cyprus, who has maybe comments and questions. So maybe Dimitris, can you take the floor, please, for a few minutes?
Hello, good morning from Cyprus. Actually, I wanted to briefly present the Cyprus the issue of with FIP. We have been having increased cases of FIP here in Cyprus since early January 2023. So it was about 20 times more cases the first trimester of 2023 than usually. Then. So it has been a great issue here in Cyprus. A lot of cats at first were dying or euthanized, and after that the illegal drug market started coming in with the legal drugs, fortunately legal drugs being used. We recently we were trying as an association to find a solution about that. So because the stray population is more affected and they are in a more needed condition, we were trying to find a cheap solution actually for a treatment option. So we were trying to import medicines for human, which were approved for human COVID-19, and I didn't listen from any of our previous speakers about the use of molnupiravir in the FIP. Has anyone any feedback about the molnupiravir? Because we are the illegal black market is using it a lot here in Cyprus, and we are actually seeing a lot of good outcome with the molnupiravir. So I would like the insight about that. There was a recent literature review in the vet record about the Cyprus problem with FIP. So I would urge everyone to read about that. We are trying now to test every cat leaving Cyprus in order to be clear, and maybe a suggestion about that has to be issued. Thank you very much, Thierry.
Thank you, Demetris. Maybe some of our speakers have answers or comments on Demetris' statement.
I can comment if Katrina's not going to. The molnupiravir is illegal currently in the UK, so we don't have access to it. But the Australians have a legal route to use molnupiravir, and they're gaining experience with it. So a bit like at the moment, we wouldn't necessarily recommend it because we don't have as much experience as we do with GS. But if you are going to use it, then it would be worth discussing it, particularly with Richard Malik in Australia, who's very free to and very available to give advice on dosage, because they're gaining experience on how to dose molnupiravir. But Katrina may have further comment.
Well, I mean, there's nothing published so far, so we don't know exactly how high the dosage would be and how effective it will be. So it's difficult to advise. Yeah, but maybe Richard, you mentioned, yeah.
Yeah, in Australia they are using it preferentially in some situations, Catherine, as opposed to using GS. So I'm sure they will advise better than we can.
Thank you very much for your input. So maybe going back to our panel session, may I introduce you our panelists? So first, Marieke Knies from Utrecht University. Marieke Knies graduated as a veterinarian in 2005 from Utrecht University. She has worked in multiple places, including Australia, and with horses and companion animals before specializing in feline medicine, including passing her membership exam of the Australian and New Zealand College of Veterinary Scientists in feline medicines. Several achievements later, she's currently doing an internal medicine residency at Utrecht University. Our second panelist, Anne Creel from FECAVA. Anne Creel graduated as a veterinarian from Ghent University in 1983. She's now the head of surgery at DAP 276 in Ghent, Belgium, and established a cat-only clinic called Cat Unique in 2019. With multiple degrees and certifications, she had held prominent positions in various committees and associations. She is actively involved in the Small Animal Veterinary Association, SAVAP, and serves as the Belgium director and board member of FECAVA. Our third panelist is Paul Carnat-Gauthier from ANSES. Paul Carnat-Gauthier is the deputy head of the French National Agency for Veterinary Medicinal Products. She is a veterinarian and started as a GMP inspector at first. Among other roles, Paul is the co-chair of the National Monitoring Committee for Veterinary Medical Products for several years. This committee has been set up with the task of providing an overall vision of the issues arising from use of VMPs in France and issuing recommendations to the French agency. One of the current issues is about FIP treatment. So maybe now we have a few anonymous statements from members of social media support groups that source and monitor the course of treatment for FIP. So can we please have the first statement video?
It is unsettling for most companion animal owners that their vet is not familiar with FIP and/or the possibility of therapy, and that they do not provide support for therapy or even actively advise against it. Though neglectable in numbers, hearing about cases in which animals were admitted for several days without success and with substandard diagnostic assessment are particularly irritating. This is when most owners turn to us, hearing about us either through different sources or via their own research. We are all former self-treaters, wanting to provide other owners with the same opportunity for therapy knowing its success. We show where and how to get the medicine. Advise on correct dosage and checks during therapy to be done with the vet. And lastly, share experiences and knowledge on how to assess the success of the therapy. We conduct initial consultations where we reference LMU Munich studies and spend time reassuring the owner and explaining the course of therapy, its risks and side effects that we are aware of, that are so far limited to abscesses caused by the injections, which confirms the current popularity of oral therapy. Therapy has shown almost a 95% success rate in thousands of cases since 2019. Including success in FIV and FELV positive cats, with promise for cats even with ocular or massive neurological symptoms. The very low number of unsuccessful cases are due only to undiagnosed neurological symptoms or insufficient dosage. We want to emphasize the many trustworthy contacts we have with veterinarians who do great work and restate that we only try to fill a gap that exists due to necessity. What is our aspiration? Of course, the approval of GS and an official therapy option, but in the meantime, support of vets in diagnosis and monitoring and rapid action for presumptive FIP cases, and the genuine consideration of the concerns of the owners and recommendations of the interest groups regarding diagnosis and treatment.
You have some comments about this first statement, so please, Anne, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you. Is everybody hearing me well? Yeah, okay. So I think as a veterinarian on the floor, it's not rather fair that they say that we as veterinarians don't diagnose or underdiagnose FIP infection. It's a well-known disease and we are really looking out for it. But first thing we have to say it's not so easy to make the right diagnose. So it's not so very straightforward. Of course, if you have a little kitten with a fluid-filled abdomen, there you go. It's rather easy. But there are a lot of cases who are not so clear from the start. So you have to look very firmly, and sometimes you have to make a fine needle biopsy of an internal lymph node to get to the real diagnosis. So and then already people spend a lot of money. And then for sure, all of the veterinarians around Europe say, okay, this is FIP infection, and they give the possibility to get the drugs. And as vet, we were a little bit overwhelmed at the beginning by owners bringing in those illegal medicines, which we as vets at that moment had no clue what was in there. Was it the right composition or not? It was vials without any notification of what was in there. So it was a very difficult situation for us as vets on the floor. Can we use it? Can we not use it? We were not able to use it because all those drugs was illegal. We had no scientific background at that moment. Don't forget, it was in the full pandemic, Corona pandemic, when this all started, to my opinion. And again, on the work floor, we cannot put a setup to do a scientific trial to see how those medications work. So we are a little bit stuck in between what we want to do and what we can do. So really, I think for the owners, they have to know that we really did our best or do our best, and we are there for their cats and as we can, and as we will hope in the future, the near future, we can all help them on a legal base, and then we will save more lives for sure. So that's what I wanted to say. It's not only, we are a little bit restricted in what we can do. So we want to see it changed. Sure.
Thank you, Anna, for your testimony. Maybe we can move to the second video statement.
FIP Warriors has been working worldwide for years to get the awareness for FIP and the treatment out into the public. We are committed to keeping access to safe and affordable medicines for this terrible disease and the protocols to treat it appropriately. Currently in most countries, awareness about the disease and the cure is not as high as we would wish. FIP Warriors has alone cured more than 100,000 cats with GS and protocols that we developed in cooperation with international vets that support us. We refer people to a list of approved brands that we have curated after carrying out due diligence. Medication can be acquired by vets presently in only Australia and UK via Bova. The few countries starting trials are not taking advantage of our advice in terms of protocols, the downsides of which we have listed in the downloadable supplementary document that will be available after the webinar. For the future, we see little to no real benefit of the legalization of the drug the way it is done now. In the UK, effective treatment is only viable for those owners with huge insurance plans. Even though there is less utter certainty in the diagnosis of FIP, some vets keep testing instead of treating the animal when they are 90% plus sure of the condition. So, some owners still run out of insured funds and come to us for help. Our belief is prevention is better and cheaper than cure. We support the development of a vaccine and Zenbicat, an American charity that collects funds for research into this vaccine. Unfortunately, this is not something we see happening in the near future. Vaccine development does not happen overnight. We aim to see this disease eradicated as much as possible and want to disband and be made obsolete once that is so. Until this happens, FIP warriors will still be needed for many years to come.
Thank you, Vic. Thank you. So maybe, Marieke, do you have some comments on that second statement? Please, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you. Well, I do agree with Anne. I do think in the overwhelming majority of vets, the awareness of FIP is actually there. And I do think we think about it when we see a cat. It is sometimes difficult to diagnose. And we just started a trial in the Netherlands with the legal medication, and we do see, we already have seen some cats that are being referred to us for FIP. And when you do some more research, they actually do not have FIP. They, for example, have septic peritonitis, so it's not as easy in every case. And also, I think it's a bit then dangerous sometimes to start treatment because I'm also worried about resistance developing in cats that don't have FIP and get treated. And also, if you treat a cat that does not have FIP and you start treatment and you forget about other diseases that the cat might have, you're actually not treating the cat for its disease. So I think it is important to diagnose it as good as we can. Also, what they said about the protocols, I do think we have protocols from Australia, from the group of Katrina Hoffman, from the group of Sam. So I do think we really have the protocols in place and that we make use of that. And I think it's difficult to use protocols from a group which hasn't done research officially. It's just difficult to then just take it over one-on-one because you don't know where all the their resources of their results come from, and it has to be, I think, written down properly. Legislation will be still a problem in Europe, but hopefully it will get better and better. And I do think that it's better to go with the legal drugs because it's properly research is properly quality controlled. I think the prices of the legal drugs are not that different of the illegal drugs. Some might be a little bit cheaper, some might be a little bit more expensive, but it's not a huge difference, I don't think. So I don't think that should be a reason to then go with the illegal drugs. Yeah, and to be honest, I haven't heard about any vaccine development for now. I don't know if Katrina heard about it, but I can't comment on that, to be honest.
Thank you, Marieke. So maybe we can move on the third statement.
I think Katrina had a comment.
Just very quickly, I'm not aware. I mean, I know that some people are working on vaccine development, but I've not heard of anything that will come on the market soon. No, not at all. Unfortunately, it's very difficult. But of course, I think with new technologies that everybody learned during the pandemic, we might be more successful also for FIP. But so far, there's nothing I think that's soon available.
Do anybody has some comments? No, Anna or Paul? Okay, so we can move on. This next video presentation is from the Professor Niels Pedersen.
Yes, we're really honored to have his statement, and I hope this will work now.
I think that our profession has not distinguished itself on this issue. The question is not how we react to the reality of what has occurred, but why have these major drug companies not lived up to their commitment to one medicine? The FIP warrior groups were a logical and inevitable outcome of desperate cat owners' need to cure their cats of this terrible and highly fatal disease, and the Chinese saw a market and need, and went for it. During and up to this time, the veterinary profession has put their heads in the sand and worried about legality and ethics. There is no question, our oaths as veterinarians allow us to assist cat owners in proper diagnosis and treatment of FIP, regardless of how the effective drugs are obtained. Yes, there are legal constraints at the present time but not ethical dilemmas. Your webinar should be about forcing big human pharmaceutical companies like Gilead, Merck and Pfizer to honor their commitment to both man and animals. It should also be noted that the latter two companies also have veterinary divisions that could have assisted and accelerated essential antiviral drugs into the veterinary market, just as their human divisions expedited them for the COVID-19 pandemic. Interestingly, cats also have a coronavirus pandemic in it, and the application of the drugs in question preceded its human counterpart.
So that's a very strong statement. Maybe Paul, do you have some comments on that statement?
Yes, thank you very much for inviting me to this webinar. And I'm very pleased to share all this information with you, because I think we need to share information and to be all aware of research and result of every study conducted in the world. So what I can say about this statement, I agree with Professor Pedersen. We need to be on the side of the owners and vet, and to provide a legal way to treat cats from FIP. One of our action is regarding the new regulation. Emma explained to us the cascade system, but there is also other measures in this regulation. And one of them is a huge restriction to the cascade, with the list of antimicrobials forbidden for vet medicines. And one of our first fight is to not have Remdesivir listed in this legal act, because after an antimicrobial substance is listed in this act, there is absolutely no way to use it in vet medicine. So this was our first fight and first victory. And now we are discussing the list of substances that can be used under the cascade system, antimicrobial substances that can be used under the cascade system, but with restriction. And Remdesivir is going to be listed in this legal act only for the treatment of cats, FIP for cats, because as it was already previously said, Remdesivir is has a very broad spectrum, and could lead to the huge use of this substance could lead to resistance. And we are very concerned with antimicrobial resistance. So what I can say is that we could have a legal way to access to Remdesivir in Europe. When our last issue is right now in most European countries, Remdesivir is only available at hospital for human and not available for vets, even under the cascade system. And when I was concerned, we had, when I first heard of GS, short term. It was, I think, 15 years ago, and we have absolutely no information about this substance, how it's produced, where it's produced, in fact. And the first time I heard of it, it was under research and development in the United States after several years after it came from China. But as Anne explained, we don't know what is in the product when it's illegally sold. So we don't know if it's effective, it's even if it's contained GS. So one of our new fight is also to help owners to access to legal product, to not have to face illegal market, black market, with absolutely no information about the quality and real efficacy of the product. So I think we are on a path with the regulation, and now in France we try to have with our vet school a huge clinical study to bring us information and to give access to the product. And we hope, as Professor Peterson said, that pharmaceutical industry could take a path also to have a product authorized for vet use. So we hope this, and we try to have contact with big pharmas to have this product authorized for vet, and especially for cats.
Thank you very much, Paul, for that comments. Very useful. Maybe a comment about the possibility to import GS from Bova company. Is it a possibility? Because we've seen in some European and non-EU countries, it's a possibility. And is it possible for large countries like France, Germany, out of this study research in the vet universities?
In the regulation, the article 112 is under specific specific national measures, because all member states have to put in place national measure to implement article 112 and others article about cascade. And in France, the import of products is very restrictive, and we can't import preparation, extemporaneous preparation. We can only have preparation in our country, in France, but we can import a product with marketing authorization in other European countries, or even in third countries like UK is now, but we need to have an authorization on the product, not only on the manufacturing site. And Bova has no marketing authorization for the product, as Emma Jones explained previously. So we can't import this product in France. It's not possible, legally possible. So if we conduct a clinical trial, we will conduct it more probably with Remdesivir and try to obtain Remdesivir from Gilead.
Thank you, Paul. So maybe, Emma, could you open an office in each EU country?
We are looking at doing that also, but they still will be extemporaneous preparations. We can't put a marketing authorization on something that we don't own. Gilead still own the patent to it, so we can't do that. We have permission to manufacture, but we can't do that. We're more than happy for other countries to come and audit our facility in the UK, but it's not going to have a marketing authorization, sadly.
Thank you. Anyway, so thank you, panel members, for such a thought-provoking discussion. So maybe we can move to some take-home messages. So veterinarians and other researchers have experienced and studied FIP for over 40 years now, but more collaboration is needed. Example on pedigree, disease information, and DNA samples. We highly recommend it to monitor closely the FIP prevalence on national level. Second, We learned that FIP diagnosis can be based on cumulative odds rather than a single, simple, definitive test result. And early onset of treatment increases the chances for the individual cat more than additional tests ever could. And third message, there is no way to definitely prevent FIP except from good husbandry practices and limiting exposure and stresses. FVE and FECAVA fully support the research on vaccines against FIP. So I think everybody would be happy for that. Thank you, everyone. We had quite some insights, and perhaps you gained some insight into the challenges and opportunities of FIP treatment. We are close to the end of our time together. Thank you very much for joining, and don't forget to hand down those panelists. If you wanted more time to chat, do check out the FV social media channels to keep up with our news. So thank you very much. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for all people attending this webinar. Thank you, and see you next time.
The slides and the video will be available, as well as the statement videos on the FE website at the end of this week. So stay tuned for this. We will notify all attendees via email. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Vitke. Thank you to FV office and the stagiaire and Nancy, who did their best in the background. So thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye. Bye.
Thank you all. Bye.